Welcome back, guys. I'm Captain Mort, and today I'm going to share a story about soldiers who found a terrifying, or we can even say haunted, abandoned military base in Alaska. That base was built during World War II, and after that it was left to rot. So please hit the like button, subscribe, and let me know in the comments where you're watching this story from. Thanks, and yeah, let's continue our story. I was 27 when they sent us out there, and I remember thinking how strange it was that the orders didn't even list the island's name, just coordinates, a dot in the Aleutians. They told us it used to be a World War II installation, abandoned for half a century. That was it. No briefing on hazards, no reason why we were the ones sent. Just 4 Army reservists dropped into the middle of nowhere. The flight out was nothing but grey sky and endless water. By the time the island came into view, it looked more like a scar than land. Black cliffs rose straight out of the sea, cut with cracks that looked too neat, too deliberate. Then I saw the structures. Rusting Quonset huts slumped like broken teeth, concrete pads from old anti-aircraft guns, and the mouth of a bunker carved into the rock itself. The pilot circled once, low enough for me to make out the lintel above the entrance. Moss and ice covered most of it, but you could still see the letters USED 1943. Holloway muttered over the rotor wash. Corps of Engineers. Place has been here a long time. Reeves just smirked and said, "Hell of a retirement home." The bird touched down on a flat patch of ice for all of 30 seconds. The pilot leaned out, shouted, "Don't stay long. Locals say this place eats men." And before we could even laugh, he was gone. The sound of the rotors faded fast, swallowed by the wind, and then it was just us and the island. Something about the silence felt wrong from the start. On a place like this, you expect gulls, maybe seals, but there was nothing, no tracks in the snow, no movement on the cliffs, just the bunker staring back at us, black and wet like an open mouth. We hauled gear into the least collapsed hut. Inside it stank of mildew and metal. Bunks half rotten, paint peeling in strips. I dragged my pack into a corner and tried not to think about how the walls groaned when the wind hit them. Carter broke the silence with a nervous laugh. "Feels like we're squatting in a coffin." Night dropped quick, faster than I'd ever seen. 1 second there was dim light, the next, pitch black. We lit a lamp, shadows crawling long across the walls, and for a while we just listened to the storm outside. Then it came. A hard, metallic clang, sharp and clear, carried through the wind. We all froze. Holloway raised his rifle without a word. Reeves leaned closer to the wall, brow furrowed. Carter whispered. That came from inside the bunker. Another clang followed, heavier this time, like something had slammed a hatch shut deep inside the rock. The sound rolled across the snow and through the hut's broken beams until it felt like it was inside our chests. We stared at each other, nobody breathing. Outside, the bunker sat in the dark, mouth open, waiting. And that was only the first night. The clang still echoed in my head when Holloway finally whispered, "Nobody leaves the hut tonight. Got it?" His voice was low, steady, but his eyes kept flicking toward the bunker like he expected something to walk out at any second. Reeves gave a tight laugh. "Hell of a welcome party." He tried to smirk, but his hand was white-knuckled around his rifle. Carter just shook his head and pulled his bag tighter around his chest. He looked like a kid waiting for a monster to crawl out from under the bed. I tried to convince myself it was just metal shifting in the wind. Old doors, rusted beams. Places like this make noises, that's all. But deep down, I knew it wasn't the same. That sound had weight, intent. The hours dragged. Wind screamed against the walls, rattling the roof. Every time it did, I expected another clang. When it finally came, it was sharper, closer. Reeves muttered, "That's not the storm." He grabbed his pack like he was ready to move, but Holloway put a hand on his shoulder. "Stay put. We wait till morning." Nobody argued, but sleep was impossible. Around midnight, the radio on the table crackled. At first, it was static, faint and broken like any bad signal. Then the static started to pulse. Short bursts, then long ones. Holloway leaned in, brow furrowed. "Morse," he said. "That's Morse," Reeves snorted. "Out here? From who?" We all leaned closer. The pattern repeated again and again. Short, 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 long, 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 then short. Carter was the first to say it out loud. "It's spelling something." 6. I felt my stomach knot. 6. Over and over. Holloway clicked the radio off, but the silence that followed felt worse. At some point, I drifted into that half-sleep where your body shuts down but your brain won't let go. I jolted awake to Carter shaking me, eyes wide. "I saw someone," he hissed. "What do you mean, someone?" I sat up fast, pulse hammering. "Outside," he said, pointing toward the bunker. "Light, like a lantern." They went inside. Reeves cursed under his breath, grabbed his weapon, and stood by the door. Holloway stared at Carter like he wanted to call him a liar, but something in the kid's face stopped him. He looked too scared to be making it up. We argued in whispers for what felt like forever. In the end, Holloway ordered us to check it out. We couldn't ignore it, not if someone else was actually here. Snow crunched under our boots as we moved across the yard, rifles up. My breath came in clouds, every step louder than it should have been. When we reached the bunker, I saw them footprints in the snow, clear as day, but halfway there they just stopped. The wind cut across us, sharp and freezing, but I barely noticed. My eyes were locked on that door, the one that Command said had been welded shut for 50 years. It was open, just a crack, but enough to see the blackness yawning inside. Carter whispered, "Told you." No one moved. We just stood there, staring at the dark slit in the bunker door, every instinct screaming to back away. The air around it felt charged, like static crawling over my skin. Finally, Holloway shook his head. "Not tonight." We pulled back. None of us argued. We turned and made our way to the hut, footsteps quick, breaths uneven. When we got inside, Reeves slammed the door shut and dropped against the wall. Nobody spoke after that. We didn't have to, because we all knew it now. We weren't alone on that island. Back inside the hut, we tried to act like nothing had happened, but the silence between us said otherwise. Nobody touched the radio, nobody lay down. We just sat there, weapons close, ears straining. Around 3 in the morning, the air shifted. It wasn't just the storm outside, it was inside too, like the atmosphere in the hut had grown heavier. My skin prickled and my breath felt shallow. Then the radio crackled back to life. At first it was the same static. Then words bled through, faint but deliberate. Not English, not even words exactly, just overlapping voices, like someone was reading roll calls all at once. My chest tightened. Reeves cursed under his breath and smacked the side of the radio, but it only made the whispers clearer. Holloway leaned close, jaw tight. "Turn it off." But before I could move, a single word cut through the static, loud and clear: "Stay." Carter backed away so fast he nearly tripped over his own gear. He was shaking, eyes darting between us and the door. "Tell me you all heard that." Nobody answered. I think we were too afraid to confirm it out loud. I remember gripping my rifle so hard my knuckles went numb, and still, I felt powerless. When the noise finally died, the silence that followed was worse. The hut seemed to shrink around us, every shadow deeper than before. I could hear Reeves's breathing, quick and shallow, and the lamp flame jumped like it was nervous too. Then Carter whispered, "What if it isn't abandoned? What if someone's still down there?" Reeves snapped back, louder than he meant to. "Then let them rot down there. We're not going in." Holloway cut him off with a glare. "Enough. We move at first light. Until then, no more talking." I lay there, wide awake, staring at the ceiling beams, every groan of the structure feeding the fear already eating me alive. I kept replaying the footprints in the snow, the way they just stopped, like the person had vanished mid-step. And behind my eyelids, I couldn't shake the image of that cracked door in the bunker, slightly open, breathing out that stale, electric air. I knew morning wouldn't make it better. I knew whatever waited inside that bunker wasn't finished with us yet. When daylight finally came, it felt more like a reprieve than a rescue. My eyes burned from staying awake, and every bone in my body ached from lying tense all night. Holloway didn't waste time. He ordered us out, said we'd sweep the base and log what we could before the weather turned again. We stepped into the grey morning, snow drifting slow from the sky. The storm had calmed, but the island still looked dead. The Quonset huts leaned against each other like drunks, their windows gaping and dark. The bunker loomed above everything, the door still cracked open, almost daring us to come closer. Reeves muttered, "That thing wasn't open yesterday. I don't care what anyone says." He kicked at the snow but didn't get closer. We split into pairs. Holloway and Carter checked the old gun emplacements while Reeves and I searched the wrecked mess hall. The roof had collapsed years ago, leaving twisted beams and a carpet of rusted tins. When I climbed over the rubble, something caught my eye. A crumpled field dressing, yellowed with age, but the blood on it wasn't rust. It was dark, dry, and no more than a year old. I called Reeves over. He picked it up with 2 fingers, held it close, and shook his head. Someone's been here, recently. The idea sat wrong in my gut. This place wasn't on any map, no locals lived anywhere near it, and yet someone had bled in that room. We regrouped at the bunker entrance. Holloway's face was pale under the grey light. We heard hammering, he said, like someone building inside. Carter jumped in quick. We need to call this in. We're not equipped for squatters, or whatever this is. Reeves snapped. Squatters? In the middle of nowhere, bleeding all over field dressings, tapping out Morse code in the night. You still think this is just people? The argument escalated, voices sharp against the silence. My chest tightened with every word. The bunker door loomed a few feet away, that stale air seeping out, thick as iron. I couldn't shake the feeling that something inside was listening, waiting for us to make the wrong move. Finally, Holloway raised his hand. Shut it. We hold position. We can't raise command, so we stick to orders. We observe, nothing else. The second he said it, the wind carried a sound across the yard, a hollow, rhythmic pounding deep inside the bunker. Once, twice, 3 times. Each strike echoed like it traveled the entire island before crawling up my spine. Reeves whispered, Jesus Christ, it's coming from below. We stood frozen, rifles raised but useless, as if pointing steel at the dark could keep whatever lived there away. And then, just as sudden, it stopped. When the silence returned, I almost wished the hammering had continued, because silence meant it was waiting for nightfall. None of us spoke after that pounding stopped. We just stood there, rifles shaking in our hands, waiting for something else to happen. It didn't. The silence pressed in until Holloway finally barked, "Back to the hut, now." We moved quick, boots crunching over the ice. Every step felt exposed, like we were crossing a spotlight even though the sky was dim and grey. When the hut door shut behind us, Reeves slammed the bolt and muttered, "We're being hunted." Carter's voice cracked. "By who? There's no one here." "Don't kid yourself," Reeves shot back. "I saw a face last night. Gas mask, bunker window, someone's out there." I wanted to argue, but the words stuck in my throat, because I'd seen it too. Not clear, not long, but enough to know he wasn't lying. The rest of the day dragged. The storm picked up again by nightfall, snow rattling the walls like gravel. We tried to act calm, eating cold rations by lantern light, but every one of us kept glancing at the door. Around 11, the dragging started. It was faint at first, like something heavy being pulled across the yard. Then it circled the hut. Slow, deliberate. Holloway lifted his rifle, finger tight on the trigger. "Stay still," he whispered. Reeves crawled to the window, peeked through the cracked frame, then froze. His breath fogged the glass. "It's standing there," he whispered, looking right at me. "What is?" I asked. He turned his head, eyes wide. A soldier, helmet, mask, just standing there. We all rushed to the window, but when I looked, the snow was empty. Only shadows. Reeves swore under his breath. I swear to God it was there. We sat in silence, nerves shot, until Carter finally leaned down to grab his boots. His face went pale. "They're gone." We tore the hut apart. Nothing. 30 minutes later, Holloway found them standing upright outside the door, perfectly placed, side by side, filled with snow and ice. Carter refused to touch them. He just backed away, whispering, "Someone's playing with us." That's when the radio flared again. Static hissed, then rolled into whispers. Voices layering, too many to count, all speaking at once. Names, ranks, numbers, like a roll call from a ghost unit. I covered my ears, but it didn't stop. It felt like the voices were inside my head, crowding my thoughts. Reeves shouted over it, "Shut it off!" But Holloway didn't move. He just stared at the speaker, face drained of color. The lamp flickered. Shadows twitched along the walls, long and jagged, like figures moving just outside the light. And then came the sound that made my blood run cold. Footsteps. Slow, heavy, directly above us. The roof was caved in, impossible for anyone to stand on. But the steps were there, crossing back and forth, each one deliberate, each one echoing through the steel. Carter gripped his rifle, shaking so bad the barrel clinked against the floor. "They're on the roof," he whispered. We all knew it wasn't possible, and that made it so much worse. The footsteps above us went back and forth, slow and steady, until it felt like the roof itself was breathing. Reeves aimed his rifle at the ceiling like he could shoot through the shadows. Carter started whispering prayers under his breath, fast and panicked. Then the lamp sputtered. The flame stretched thin, then flared high, then dropped to almost nothing. For a second, the hut was all shadow, and I swore I saw figures moving across the walls, not ours, not matching us. Holloway snapped, "Gear up. We're not waiting to be cornered." His voice was sharp, but there was a tremor buried in it. We pushed out into the storm. Snow whipped hard across the yard, stinging our faces. That's when the courtyard lit up. One of the floodlights, dead for half a century, sputtered to life. And they were standing there. 4 men in formation, full World War II uniforms, still as stone. Their helmets gleamed under the light, their coats whipped in the wind, but their faces were nothing but shadow. They didn't move. They didn't speak. They just faced us. Reeves shouted, "Contact," and lifted his rifle. But the second he did, the light cut out. Darkness swallowed them whole. The next moment, doors across the base started slamming one after another. Bang, bang, bang. The sound rolled through the ruins like someone was herding us, closing off every escape. "Fall back," Holloway yelled, pulling Carter by the shoulder. We stumbled toward the bunker without thinking, snow crunching, hearts pounding. The sound followed us, metal grinding and echoing from every direction. My lungs burned, my legs felt like lead, but fear kept me moving. Inside the bunker, the air was thick, wet, colder than outside. Our boots echoed against concrete. And then it started, pounding. From the far door, the one we'd seen cracked open before. It was sealed now, but something hammered at it from the other side. Heavy, steady, like fists made of steel. Each strike rattled the walls and sent dust falling from the ceiling. Carter screamed, "It's coming through!" He fired 3 rounds at the door. The shots rang like thunder, but nothing gave way. The pounding only grew louder. Then the radio, strapped to Holloway's chest, screamed to life. Not static this time. Voices, dozens of them, maybe hundreds, reading off names, numbers, call signs, overlapping until it was a wall of sound. Reeves dropped to his knees, clutching his head. "Make it stop. Jesus, make it stop." I pressed my hands against my ears, but it didn't help. The voices were inside me, crawling under my skin, rattling in my bones. The pounding hit a final time, so hard the concrete under our boots trembled. The door bowed, dust spraying into the air like something massive was forcing its way out. And then silence. Complete, suffocating silence. We didn't wait. Holloway pulled us back into the storm, screaming over the wind, "Go, leave it." We abandoned the hut, the bunker, even half our gear. We ran blind through the blizzard, stumbling, slipping, lungs on fire, until my legs felt like they'd tear apart. And when I finally looked back over my shoulder through the sheets of snow, I saw them again, lanterns, dozens of them, lined along the cliffside, swaying in perfect rhythm, all moving toward us. We didn't stop running until our lungs felt like they were tearing open. The storm swallowed everything, and still those lanterns burned in my mind, swaying in perfect rhythm like they weren't carried by men at all. We finally stumbled into the wreck of a generator shack half buried in snow. Holloway shoved us inside and dragged a rusted sheet of metal across the opening. It wasn't much cover, but it was something. Reeves collapsed in the corner, gasping. Carter curled against the wall, rocking back and forth, whispering, "They're still coming, they're still coming." His eyes darted like a trapped animal. Holloway crouched next to him. "Breathe, kid. Just breathe." But even his voice had lost that steady edge. I sat with my rifle across my lap, hands numb, body shaking from cold and fear. My ears rang with silence, but I couldn't tell if the voices were really gone or just buried under the storm. Jennings, quiet for hours, finally groaned. His jacket was torn where those long fingers had clawed him. The gashes ran deep, dark blood frozen at the edges. He looked at me and whispered something that didn't make sense. "Check roll call. Names are wrong. Names aren't ours." He trailed off, eyelids heavy. I pressed my hand against his chest, trying to keep him awake, but his skin was cold. The hours crawled. The storm battered the shack, snow seeping through cracks, the wind screaming like voices just outside. Reeves stared at the ceiling the whole time, gripping his rifle, lips moving silently like he was arguing with someone only he could hear. At dawn, the wind broke. Just like that, no warning. One moment it was deafening, the next it was calm. The silence that followed was worse than the storm. Holloway forced us out into the pale light. We set up a signal fire, hands shaking so bad we almost dropped the flares. Reeves kept glancing at the cliffs, muttering, "They'll be here before anyone else gets to us." But when the helicopter appeared, skimming low over the waves, I almost cried from relief. The bird touched down, rotors blasting snow around us. The crew chief leaned out, waving us in. As we hauled Jennings onto the bird, the pilot shouted something I'll never forget. "Why'd you light your beacon 3 nights ago? We almost sent another crew in." We all froze. The beacon was still in Holloway's pack. We hadn't lit it until this morning. The pilot frowned when nobody answered. "Well, someone did." I looked back at the cliffs as the bird lifted. Snow still covered everything. Empty. Silent. But I couldn't shake the feeling that somewhere inside those bunkers, something was watching us leave, and it wasn't finished. The ride back to base should have felt like relief, but it didn't. None of us spoke over the roar of the rotors. Jennings lay across the floor, pale and shaking, his blood drying in stiff patches on his jacket. Carter sat with his face buried in his hands. Reeves just stared out the open door, watching the ocean roll beneath us like he expected something to rise out of it. When we landed, medics rushed Jennings off, and then command whisked us into a debriefing room, fluorescent lights, a table too clean, and an officer we'd never met waiting with a clipboard. He didn't even look up when we walked in. "Equipment failure," he said flatly. "That's all I'm seeing here." Reeves leaned forward, jaw tight. "Equipment failure? Did equipment rip our guy open? Did equipment walk across the damn roof?" The officer didn't flinch. "Your radios were compromised by atmospheric interference, lights triggered by residual charge, stress, fatigue, hallucination. Those explain the rest." Holloway slammed his fist on the table. "Hallucination? Then how the hell did the pilot know about our beacon before we lit it?" The officer's pen froze for just a second before he scribbled again. He didn't answer. We were dismissed with no report to file, no signatures, nothing. It was like it hadn't happened. Jennings was transferred out within a week. Carter cracked before the month was over, screaming in the barracks that they were calling his name through the vents. Reeves walked away from the army altogether. I stayed. But I never shook what I saw as the helicopter lifted us off that island. The courtyard light had flickered back on, bright as a searchlight. And under it, 4 figures stood in formation, motionless, watching us leave. Years later, when I couldn't let it go, I pulled up satellite maps. I typed in those same coordinates. The island was gone. Just blank ocean, like it had never existed at all. I've told this story more times than I should have, and I've regretted it every single time. People don't want to hear it. They laugh, they shake their heads, or they call me a liar. Some ask why I didn't record it, why I didn't take photos. Like I'd have thought of pulling out a camera when I was trying not to lose my mind. But I know what I saw. I know what we all saw. Reeves drank himself into silence and never spoke about it again. Carter never left the hospital after his breakdown. Holloway carried it until the day he died. And when I saw him last, the only thing he said to me was, "Don't ever go back there." And me? I still dream about that bunker door, the pounding, the voices crawling into my head, reading names that weren't ours. I wake up hearing boots crunching across a roof that isn't there. I've checked the maps more times than I can count. That island doesn't exist anymore, not even a rock in the water. But I was there. I walked those halls. I saw those lanterns on the cliffs, moving in perfect rhythm, like a unit still marching after death. If you ever get orders to coordinates that don't show up on a map, don't go. Some places were abandoned for a reason. So, that's the end of our video. If you made it this far, make sure to hit like and subscribe. It really helps the channel, and it's free. And if you want more terrifying encounters like this one, check out the other videos on screen right now. Thanks for watching, and stay safe out there. See you soon.